Hello beautiful, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this slightly impromptu palette ranking. I usually do a ranking once every month, but I have been falling a little bit behind and not really doing them once every 4 weeks for many myriads of reasons. I have had a lot of stuff to do, there's been a lot of stuff to do behind the scenes. It's just been a lot of other things that I've been wanting to film instead. So I thought today I would be ranking this amount of palettes, I don't know how many, in today's video, just letting you know about some of the palettes that I have been trying out lately that I haven't gotten around to review for one reason or another. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on some of these somewhat newer palettes, wanting to know if these are worth picking up or not, this is the place to be. And if you haven't been here before, if this is your first video here, hello, my name is Angie. I just love makeup and beauty, and especially love eyeshadow, and I especially love colorful eyeshadow, and you will see that when it comes to my preferences in this video. But I will make sure to note whether or not the quality is good, even though I will rank some of these palettes higher based on the color stories. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to subscribe because I am uploading every day until Christmas. So we're gonna start at the absolute bottom and we're gonna head our way to the top. I will link all of these palettes down below in the description box, and if I have any videos dedicated to these palettes, I will also link that down below. If I have swatches that I have saved, I will pop the swatches up as I'm showing you the palette. If I do not have any swatches, I will not do dedicated b-roll for this video. So if no swatches pop up, it just means that I didn't have any swatches saved for the palettes, so just check the video in the description box instead. This look is filmed and it's already live on my channel, so in the pinned comment I will leave a link to this look, and also I will link the things that I'm using in case you're interested. And also with some of these brands I do have an affiliate code. I will also leave that in the description box in case you want to save some money, and Black Friday is upcoming and a lot of these brands are gonna have a deal, so keep your eye open for that as well. Okay, let's start at the bottom, and I will say none of these palettes are really at the bottom because of the quality, because I'm gonna put the BH Cosmetics, the face palette. Listen, let me tell you, this face palette I've actually used quite a lot. I think this face palette that is called Cabo, really pretty. I've used it quite a lot. So these are the new travel eye quads from BH Cosmetics. There is literally nothing really wrong with this quality. This is the decent BH Cosmetics quality, but it isn't the awesome BH Cosmetics quality. And I feel like this is the Egypt one. I think I'm popping up some swatches so that you can see. I think the big problem with this is that this is a decent quality, but it's not really good color stories. These color stories do not reflect how I feel about the color stories that BH Cosmetics usually does, because I feel like BH Cosmetics is really good at making good color stories, but these just weren't really that. And that's the reason why these are in the bottom, because I feel like there's only one palette actually, which is the Iceland palette, that I would reach for and do a look with on its own. All of the other palettes are just a weird mismatch of colors that I don't necessarily invite to any kind of creativity. And also BH Cosmetics did say that they did design and do these palettes, the formula and the packaging and all of that, before they went into chapter 11 bankruptcy, and also another collection, the Nude Ego. Is it called that? I think it's called the Nude Ego collection. I'm not going to be reviewing that collection in this video, but I will say I like the color stories of that collection better, and I also like the quality of that collection better. So when it comes to these quads, I just think that BH Cosmetics has done so many better things, both when it comes to quality and when it comes to color selections. So I don't think that that was the best that they have done. Let me just put it like that. I'm also going to put this one here, and I'm a little bit disappointed with this one. This is from LH Cosmetics. This is the Daybreak palette. They come out with a palette since then that's called the Reload palette. Oh, I love that color story so much more. This color story, no matter what I do, it ends up being kind of gray on me, and I also don't think that this one or this one are pigmented enough for my liking, and they just end up looking a little gray on me. And I wish that I could be more able to use this blue more as a fully opaque lid color or inner corner highlight, but I don't really feel like it works like that. So I think that this one is just not a palette that I would reach for, because I don't like gray eyeshadows, and I feel like no matter what I do with this one, I end up getting something that's a little gray, and that's a shame because I don't love gray eyeshadow. I know, sue me. The next palette is actually from one of my absolute favorite brands, and this is Unearthly Cosmetics, and this is the Bunnies palette. This is actually a re-release. This is only color story. This color story makes no sense to me. I don't know what to do with this color story. I feel like this color story is only midtones of colors that they're too dark to be pastels on me, and they're too light to be able to use in the crease on its own on me. And I feel like most of these shimmers end up looking darker than the mattes, which is not what I go for. So for me, this is just a very... it's the kind of color story that I would need another palette to match with it, but since these are not pastels, it's not a palette that I reach for as a companion palette. So for me, this is not my favorite color story at all from Angelica Cosmetics. I don't mind the quality, this color story just isn't doing it for me. I just have trouble coming up with something to do with it, and I have so many palettes from Angelica Cosmetics that I love, so I'm okay with not loving each and every one of the color stories. Then we're coming into the Sorcerer palette by Fantasy Cosmetica. I think that this is a really good color story, but I think that these mattes are a little weak, and I'm going to talk about another Fantasy Cosmetica palette in just a bit, and I think that they were able to get the mattes to be better in that palette. These mattes are a little thin, and you kind of have to start with the darkest one and blend the edges, and when you do that, you can get a good result, but not a perfect result. The shimmers are incredible. One of these shimmers, I think it is this one in the middle, it's almost a little bit of a putty texture. I did not have any problems with creasing, but I'm just letting you know, the shimmers are incredible. They're definitely the star of the show. The mattes in this one is probably the weakest mattes the brand has had. Not like totally unworkable, but definitely not the best that they've had. I think, don't crucify me. Don't crucify me when I show you this one. This is good quality. This is definitely good quality. I'm putting this here because of the price tag. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Mothership Mega Celestial Nirvana. This is the holiday palette of this year. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this quality. This packaging is honestly a little bit too big for my liking. I feel like they could have squished this up a little bit and gotten something that's a little bit easier to handle. This is a little bit cumbersome. These are nice shadows, but I think that $85 is too steep of a price tag for this. How am I gonna put this? I think the Pat McGrath Mothership palettes have really good quality. Better quality than this, not necessarily with the mattes, but with the shimmers. And yes, you are paying even more money for that. But I honestly think that if you would have told me that this palette was $45, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. I just don't think it's worth $85. There are no special shades in here. There are barely anything that's even resembling a duochrome. They're just traditional shimmers, and I just feel like you could get this quality for less than half the price. There's nothing wrong with it, but I also don't think there's anything in this palette that makes me go like, oh yeah, that's definitely luxury. I think with this palette, and I'm not talking about the Mothership palettes, with this palette, I think the only thing that's luxury with this palette is the price tag. I'm sorry. I've had better luck with Pat McGrath's like face products than I have with her eyeshadows. I think we just have different preferences when it comes to like what I like to work with. I think her blushes and highlighters and like her foundation and concealer and powder, they're incredible. I think her eyeshadows are good, but I can get better at half the price, in my humble opinion. This next palette is solely based on the size and the color story, and that is the Sugar Drizzle, the mattes. I think that this matte formula is an incredible matte formula. Like, the mattes are pigmented, blendable, buildable, very nice mattes, but this palette is just too much. This palette needed to be edited down a little bit, and the owner of this brand said that purple is her favorite color and she wanted to do every single shade of purple she could think of. And I think that that is amazing, but I think that we sometimes also need to stop and think, will that translate well into like for consumers? Because as a consumer, even though I did receive this palette in PR, I look at this and I'm like, this could have been a 12 pan. I really think that you would have been able to do a really good 12 pan if you picked out 12 of these shades and made, there's just some of them are just a little bit too similar, which just makes this be a little bit redundant, and that's a shame because the quality is just so incredible. Here's the House of L palette by Adept Cosmetics. I also got sent this one in PR. I think the color story of this palette is incredible. There are 3 mattes here, and these mattes are a really nice matte formula, which is the kind of matte formula that you can build on itself, so you can actually get depth and dimension with only using one color, which is something that I really appreciate. With that being said, I do prefer a matte heavy palette over shimmery palette, which is not usually the kind of palettes that Adept Cosmetics does, and I totally respect that. Every brand has their thing, but I kind of wish that one of these shimmers would have been a darker matte just for my preference, or even like a pastel, because that also could have been really cool. I mean, you can create contrast not only with adding darkness but also with adding lightness, and I think that that would have been for me something really good. I will also say that these shimmers are so emollient that these in this palette actually do crease on me kind of quickly, and that is something that I noticed. So I'm just throwing that out there. You can probably see with my eyes that I have a pretty big fold here, like age is really hooding my lids, so that also plays into it. So if you're also like me and you're having a slight hood, just keep that in mind. I did not have that problem with the Adept palette that my friend Heather Austin did, the Heather Austin palette, but I did have that problem with this one. Next, we're gonna do the Ace Beauty Violet Sage palette, and I do think that this palette was a palette that they were releasing together with Boxycharm, and then they put up a couple of these palettes on the site, and I managed to buy it. I really like this color story, but I will agree, the first time I used it, I was like, no, this is the same good formula. Even the second time I used it, I was like, I really like it, but then the third time I used it, which was outside of like YouTube, I realized that first of all the shimmers are not the same as in the first one, and that got me thinking, so this is probably another formula at least, and the mattes are not as buildable and as pigmented. I don't think that this is the old formula, because the old formula with Ace Beauty, I was not able to build those on each other at all. It was impossible for me to build a dark on a light. This one I can build dark on a light, but they're not as good as the Ace Beauty formula that I know and love. So there is a possibility that they do produce their Boxycharm palettes somewhere else, and I will say that's maybe not the best way to get Boxycharm consumers to get into the brand. I think it would be a better idea to have the same quality in Boxycharm, even though I realize that maybe that will be more expensive, but also it would probably get people to realize that Ace Beauty actually has one of the best formulas out there. They really do. Now we're getting into the next one of Fantasy Cosmetica. This is the Bard palette. This is a really cute color story. I like this color story a lot. Again, shimmers are absolutely incredible. The mattes are better than the ones in the Sorceress palette, but not my absolute favorite matte formula. But I definitely think they're going in the right direction with this one. And this one, if I started with the darkest one and built and blended with a lighter one, I had full opacity and no patchiness. So that tells me that this is definitely an even easier formula to work with. If you're into like more fantasy or gaming inspired things, Fantasy Cosmetica and also Game Beauty, oh my, I was like, what is it called? We're having a palette by them coming up. Those are 2 really good brands to check out if you're more into that nerdy universe like me. I love those kind of things, and you wanted to add some stuff that brings you joy not only with using it and wearing it, but also like looking at it. Like, it's the Bard palette. I think it's Dungeons and Dragons inspired. Who doesn't like that? This is a little quad by Kaleidos. They released these quads, and this is the Flowing Haze, which is again pretty great. I think the color story of this one is beautiful, and I will say this has enough plum in it so it doesn't look that gray on me, and I was able to make a really cute look with this. I think with the quads with Kaleidos, my biggest I want to say downfall, the thing that would make me reach for the quads from Kaleidos even more, is if they were having at least one lighter shade, because I feel like I need one light shade to finish up my looks, and I don't think that any of these would be an inner corner highlight on most skin tones. So I think that for me, I would like something that's just a little lighter in a palette for it to be perfect for me. This one is actually a really good palette. It is just a little quad, and this is from LH Cosmetics. I just don't reach for all shimmer palettes that often, but I do like the idea of having a shimmer palette that's just a quad. I don't need a million different colors, but again, I am a matte girl, not a shimmer girl when it comes to eyeshadows. A good matte will always sell me a palette, but this one is really cute. And these are more like sparkly, toppery, duochromy topper shades. They're really beautiful, really good quality. I 100% recommend this if this is something you're looking for. It's just not something that I'm reaching for all the time. This one is solely based on the color story, and I really try to love this color story, but I just don't. I really enjoyed the Nouveau palette. That color story for me, I just really liked it. I liked working with it. I loved how it looked on the eye. I think the colors are beautiful. With this palette, I feel like it's so gray. And like I said before, I don't love gray on me. I don't know if you can tell when I'm holding this palette up next to me. Right now I'm wearing a foundation that is described as a light to medium, and I would say that I am a light to medium skin tone, and I have a neutral golden undertone, which I don't know if it shows on camera. I'm trying to be as true to reality as possible with my color settings, and I do not do any kind of editing or filters or color correcting or anything like that in editing mode. I only like cut pieces out of my videos because I'm trying my best to show you like what you're seeing is what I'm seeing, and that I put a lot of a lot of time into trying to make that work. We'll say with this palette, I like the quality a lot. I think the quality is really beautiful, but it just ends up looking a little gray on me, and I don't love that. I do have a palette video where I am using this and doing 2 looks, and even though I like the quality, I'm just like not loving the looks on me. I feel like they look grungy, not in a like fun, adventurous grungy, more in a like I need a shower kind of a grungy. You get it. This is the Sugar Drizzle Cosmetics Trick or Treat palette. Look at the little dino, it's so cute. This palette they released, I think, before Halloween, and this is a 6-pan palette. I love a good 6-pan palette. This one has 3 shimmers and 3 mattes, and I honestly think that the combo of these is really good because you can use all of these colors together. This with this, this with this, which is what I did. I did a look with these 3 here, and it was so good. And you can also use this with this, and then you have a multi-chrome here. You have like a red, you see it's like a duochrome or like even multi-chrome green. You see green, gold, red. Did you see that? And you see here, green, and then goes to like purple gold. I think you can see that. And this one is more like a duochrome. It's like a bronze to a brown. These are just really special, and it brings a lot to the table. And I really, like I said, really like the mattes from Sugar Drizzle Cosmetics. I'm super excited to see what they're doing in the future. I thought that this 6-pan was really, really nice. I enjoyed the looks, and even when I was talking to my husband, I was going through my palettes, I opened this one and I was like, oh, I really like the look that I did with this palette. And he was like, do it again. And I was like, you know what? I might do it again. And I rarely feel that way about makeup looks in the way that I'm like, oh, I kind of want to do that again. This is on top mainly because of the theming. Don't come for me. I see what you're gonna say, but I love Star Wars. And I really did like the look that I did with this one as well. This is the C-3PO palette that ColourPop did with Star Wars. I like, and again, the same with this palette. Let me rephrase. I love yellow with browns. Skip the orange, yellow and a cool tone brown together. Incredible. And this is what this palette gives me. Not necessarily maybe a cool tone brown, but like not an orange leaning brown. I love a yellow leaning brown. I love a cool tone brown. I love oranges too, but like I love those together. And I also really enjoy that all of these shimmers in the middle here are very yellow leaning. They're not like a traditional gold. They're like bumping it up a bit so that it's really yellow leaning. And then you have the more traditional champagne-y color up here, a very bright, almost white vanilla one, and then you have a mustard and like a light beigey mustard, and then a mid-tone brown here that has some shimmer in it. Honestly, it's a very nice palette, very good quality. If you like yellow leaning browns like me, those are pretty much the only browns I like. I think that this is a good palette. It's a good quality. Had it not been C-3PO, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I would not have been so excited. But again, I am the kind of person that it does bring me joy to see good packaging. Now we're getting into the Game Beauty palette. This is the Cyberpunk palette. I had a lot of fun with this palette, and I will say one of the reasons why this one is ranking the way that it is that I really like this color story, and I really love this yellow. It is a very pigmented, beautiful yellow, and I'm super impressed with it. Will say this blue and this purple, they need a little work. They're doable, but they need a little work. But I will say that Game Beauty has also been one of those brands that you have seen them progress over time. I still feel like they have a little bit to go, but they're bringing a lot of different textures into the palette, and some of these are just really, really incredible formulas, and it gives me so much joy to see a brand just really take in, again, constructive feedback and just be better and better. And nobody does cool gaming inspired palettes like they do. Like, these are just so cool and pretty. Last one in this pile is gonna be the Jaclyn Cosmetics Strawberry Feels. I love this color story. One of my favorite combos, even more than I like yellows with browns. I love pinks with reds. Pinks with reds is one of my favorite color stories, and I will say all of these mattes worked incredible. And I love a matte white because, like I said, I love contrast in my looks, and I love that this is very matte heavy. And the only reason why this isn't even higher on top is because I don't think that Jaclyn has nailed her shimmer formula. These two shimmers are pretty mediocre. They're not bad, they're not unworkable, but they're not really incredible. And it surprises me a little bit because I think in my heart of hearts, I think that Jaclyn knows what a really good shimmer formula is, and it surprises me that this is what we see in the palette. Because this shimmer formula is a little bit mediocre, but I like the mattes, and I love this color story, and I like the size of the packaging. I think that the palette, all in all, is a hit. If we don't count those two shimmers. They could have been something else. 2 more mattes, maybe. Let's talk about the next Kaleidos quad, and this is the one that is called Glowing Iris. This is the purpley one, and I will say again, this one is slightly too dark for me to be an inner corner highlight, but I will say with this one, I do think that there are plenty of skin tones out there. You just need to be 1 shade darker than me to be able to use this as a good contrasting shade. I like that there is a cool, like a cooler purple, dark one, a mid-tone one, a shimmer one, and a lighter one. I think the composition of this is really good. Had this been a pastel lavender, this would have been on top. Because I love quads like that. A really dark, a really light, a mid-tone, a shimmer. I would have been head over heels for that. Even this one, a pastel and 2 shimmers. I feel like a lot of brands don't do stuff like that, but I would buy stuff like that. With that being said, I realize that I'm probably in the minority, but because otherwise, I mean, that stuff would be created, right? Sometimes things don't exist for a reason, and it's because you're the only one asking for it. But I really do like this quad, and I think it's really nice. Now we're getting into the Strange and Unusual palette by Bella Beauté Bar. I think they really went and did something with this palette. It is honestly super incredible, and what really is the star of the show in this palette are the shimmers. They are incredible. I don't know if you can see some of the, yeah, you can see some of the duochromes coming out when I'm like, yeah, did you see that? I think you can see. This one has duochromes, multichromes, full-on metallic wonderfulness. These shimmers and metallics, incredible. The mattes are okay. Not my favorite, but I honestly, some of them are incredible. Like this black, ugh, it's so dark, it's almost scary. Really like this green here as well. Some of them are just not fully opaque, not that easy to build on. Don't think that this is a bad palette. They can definitely work around it, but I do think that if they are able to get their matte formula to be as good as their shimmer formula, then we're talking. Next palette is going to be the collaboration between Doodles and the Bunny and Gourmande Girls. I think that this is such a cute Halloween palette. I think they did such a good job with this one. This has really good mattes and really good metallics. The only reason why this isn't higher is because 2 of the metallics are pretty neutral, and we don't really have anything of these metallics that are a really light one. They're all pretty mid-tone or darker, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I just prefer a variety when it comes to not only colors. Honestly, it's not so much about a variety in colors when it comes to me. I want a variety in textures, in tone, and in depth. That is what I want a variety in. And I realize with that being said, that is a very personal preference, and that's why I'm saying do take some of these things with like, this is my preference. It hasn't really got anything to do with the quality. Did like this palette. I think it's really pretty. I mean, Halloween season is over, but we can be spooky all year round, right? This is the Sigma and the Alice in Wonderland palette. I had a lot of fun with this palette, and I will say, I wish that they would have picked another inside instead of this gold, because I feel like this gold inside is making these colors look less intense and less interesting than they are. I really wish that this hadn't had a gold inside. I don't think that that is doing these colors any kind of favors. If you've seen, because I did a video doing 2 looks with this one, I love the looks. My favorite colors are these 3 down here. This metallic black with a lot of like multicolored shimmers in it, absolutely incredible. These 2 green like tealy mattes down here, so great. I think that this palette is so nice. I had no problems at all working with this one. I just think that it should not have been a gold inside, because I don't think that that is really showing the color story to its full potential. Sometimes a colored inside can be really good, and sometimes it's doing the palette no favors. Here is the Tropic color between Sydney Grace and the Fancy Face. They did a collab and I got sent this in PR. This one is heavy. You can tell that there's a lot of product in this one. This one also has a little mirror. It is a really pretty palette. You know my favorite element in this palette? My favorite element is that there are 3 matte blues and they are so good. They're so nice. This pastel is just blowing me away. This palette has 2 really light contrasting colors that just look incredible. This is like a cream vanilla white with a sheen to it. So it's like a satin, so flattering, so easy to work with, absolutely stunning. I think that this palette is beautiful. The only thing that's not my personal preference is that every other one of these shimmers are traditional foily, fully opaque shimmers or like metallics, which are some people's favorite formula. I prefer something that is slightly sheer, that you can build up, that has a little bit more sparkle to it, because I feel like that is more flattering on my lids. Because I feel like sometimes these foily formulas or fully opaque formulas accentuate like that my lids are not fully smooth anymore. I mean, turning 39 soon, I feel like that helps with the texture on my lids. Not that that is like something that's needed, it's just a preference thing, but these are really good quality. And if you're looking at this color story and thinking like, wow, that's beautiful, or if you're thinking when you're listening to me describing those metallic shades and you're thinking, wow, that is perfect, exactly what I want, this might be for you. Slightly above it, I have the Teresa is Lethal, and can I tell you, the main reason is that the shimmers in this one are probably some of the best shimmers that Lethal Cosmetics has ever done. Let's forget about these 2 colors up here. I'm never gonna be using those. I'm sorry, Teresa. I've met Teresa. Teresa is so funny, she is so lovely, but she's pale. Her and I do not have the same skin tone, and on me, these are not gonna work. Neither of these shades are gonna work, but I really love all of the other shades, and I was surprised at how much I loved the look that I did with this palette. Like loved, not like like loved. I love the look. This shimmer is incredible. This silver is incredible. This is one of the colors that like I really like to have, especially with red. So I could literally pull this one out and use with the red matte, and I would love it because it is a pink, peach, fiery, like sparkly. Ugh, love something like that. I think this is a really fun palette. I mean, not my absolute dream color story, and those 2 colors in the corner really does not do anything for me or my complexion, but other than that, I think it is a beautiful palette and I really am happy to have it in my collection. Now we're coming into a palette that I've had in my collection for a really long time, and I've used it quite a few times on my channel and in reels. I think I've done a reel with this, and I've dipped into this palette to get some colors, and I realized I've never ranked this palette. I've never reviewed it, even though I like it so much. And that is the Unearthly Cosmetics Leather and Lace. And this is what I'm talking about when I talked about that palette in the bottom, is that they have so many palettes that I like. This is actually described as a neutral palette for colored lovers, but I would also want to describe this palette as a colorful palette for neutral lovers, because this is the perfect bridge in between what is a neutral and what is a color, because there are like more mossy olivey greens, there are some bricky browns, and there are some like almost mauvey berry burgundy, maybe more aubergine tones down here. Then you have 3 shimmers. I don't know if you can see it here as well, that first shimmer is a duochrome. Is that showing? I don't know if that's showing, but that is a really pretty, it is like a champagne with a slight baby pink sheen to it. It's very flattering and very icy, and definitely gives enough contrast to any of these. This is a really pretty palette. I have a video where I'm doing 2 looks with this. I will leave it down below. I have no idea why I didn't get around to reviewing it, because honestly, this is a really nice palette and I've used it a lot and I just forgot about it. Sorry. This is my favorite of the ColourPop and Hocus Pocus palettes. I think it's so fun. I love the packaging. This packaging, it has like almost like lime green holographic details. You see that? And then these are shiny, and then there is a matte black soft touch packaging and the shine on the back. I just think the packaging is beautiful. I know not everyone is into these like cartoonish things, but I am. And I like it. So this is what it looks on the inside, and this is what I mean, that sometimes an inside can really give something to the color scheme. Like this one is that holographic green inside. I don't know if it's showing. And I think that this one really helps with the color story to just convey that this is a little bit more of a funky but green color story. And I really like what ColourPop has been doing lately when they're doing more colorful palettes, is that they put them in columns, so that if you are a little bit unsure of what colors go together or where to start, you have like a purple column, a green one, an orange one, a brown one, and this like cool tone one. I tried to do a look with this gray one. I don't... Can we make this gray trend stop? No, but honestly, I'm so happy for you if you love grays. There are so many options out there. That's not the favorite part of this palette for me. I love this light green matte with some shimmer in it. It is the perfect accent color. Really does bring a lot of like contrast to your look. I really like the quality of these on the eyes. These shimmers look beautiful. And then we have this Super Shock up here that's called Candle is a Light. Is it called that? And it's like green specks and a sheen to it, and like it's like a champagne with a slight green shift and some green specks in it. Super pretty. I really like this palette. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've actually done quite a few looks with it. That is my favorite ColourPop and Hocus Pocus palette so far. Now we're getting into not my favorite Nomad palette. I'm having a Nomad ranking coming up real soon. This is in the top category, but not my tippity top, and this is the Hudson Valley palette. This is their fall scheme palette, and if you've heard me talk during this video, you would see why I like this one so much. It is so matte heavy, and again, they're also doing this column thing. You have this neutral row, you have a green row, a shimmer row, a red row, and row send help, and then you have this like more warm brown row with this yellow. I did 2 looks with this palette, really enjoyed the looks that I did. I've had a lot of fun with this palette, and I think that you're able to do really incredible, impactful looks with this one. And for me, I don't need more than 3 shimmers, but if you like more shimmers than that, Nomad of course has other palettes as well. But I really like this, and I like that they went so bright with the oranges and yellows and reds. These reds, they're bright, and I love it. Okay, I get that I have not been the most positive about this palette, but I have to review this out of a, is this really a good palette? Is this a good color story? Do I like the looks that I've done with this palette? And I have to be honest and say, yes, I do think that this is a good palette. This is Natasha Denona, my dream palette. When I reviewed this one, because look at this, it goes from really light to really dark and actual black, both in like shimmers, like you have some light shimmers here, and then this is a multi-chrome. Do you see the green that came out? Oh, that is a multi-chrome. This is a really good palette if you have never tried Natasha Denona before, because this one has all of her great formulas. It has the shimmer, like topper, sparkly shades, the metallics. It has the gel to, like the cream gel to powder finish. It has the mattes. It has a multi-chrome. You're able to sample all of the greatness of Natasha Denona in really good quality, in colors that are very representative for the brand, in a color story that you can make light looks, dramatic looks, colorful looks, or neutral looks. And with that being said, I do think that this is a really good palette. Where I have been a little bit, I don't want to say critical, because I haven't really been critical, but I have been telling you that if you're not a collector of Natasha Denona and you own a couple of palettes from Natasha Denona, this isn't really bringing anything new. If you have the Sunrise palette, the Bronze palette, maybe the Glam palette, maybe you have the Retro palette, a lot of the color stories in those palettes are represented in this palette. So I think that if you own a lot of the MIDI palettes from Natasha Denona, you could probably recreate every look made with this one, except maybe the multi-chrome, but like everything that could be made with this palette, you could recreate with existing Natasha Denona palettes. And that has been my biggest complaint with this one, is that like, I get that this is her dream palette, but was it 100% needed within the range that she already has? That I don't know. We're in the top 2. And you're probably thinking, what is in the top 2? Because I don't think a lot of people would have guessed this. I'm gonna be honest with you, if I were to tell you, what do you think is gonna be in the top 2? I don't think any of you is gonna guess this. And also, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, hey, where's that palette? Hey, where's that palette? I also have another pile of palettes that's gonna be in an upcoming, they're probably gonna be in my yearly palette ranking. Those are palettes that I'm still in the process of reviewing. I wasn't done with them yet, so if you're missing any palettes, just know I haven't forgotten about them. I think they're coming. I didn't think so. Listen, I'm as surprised as you are. You don't have to tell me, but this quality is so nice. This is the Glamlight and Barbie palette, and first when they started sneak peeking this, and when I first glanced at this palette, I was like, oh, it's another purple pink palette. But it's really not. It's really not. This is pinks going into purples, going into blues, going into teals, going into mustardy neutrals. And I gotta say, I really like these colors. The looks that I have done with this palette have been so incredible. I've loved them. There is a really deep section down here. Like, these are deep colors, and then you have this super bright corally red that matches so well together with this one. So if you were able to do something with these 3 shades here, you will be able to create something super bright, super fun, and super dramatic. And I will say, yes, when it comes to lightness, this palette is missing a couple of light colors, I will say, and it's going to be the same with the upcoming palette. Both Glamlight and the upcoming brand that I'm going to talk about usually do not put really light shades in their palettes, and it might be because they are owned and run by a woman of color. That might be why, so I'm not really holding it against them. It's not that hard for me, and it's the same with all of these things. It's not that hard for me to reach into something, even if I'm saying it as like a critique of a palette. Know that it's just coming from a personal perspective of like what I like. But gosh, I really love this palette, and you can create so much drama with these colors down here. So pretty. But yeah, this together with like a pastel palette, that is my dream combo. So number 1 then, you're probably thinking, what palette from a Black woman-owned brand is number 1? And that is the unsung hero of 2022, the Paletopoly palette. This is so good. This palette is so good. It is so good. And I will say, this palette actually has a couple of really light colors, like this one here and this one here. Ace Beauté is pretty known for not putting any light colors in their palettes. It's usually a little bit matte heavy, which this one is too, and it's usually leaning more on the mid, going super deep, which is honestly something I like, and you can just pull in something else. Again, it's just a personal preference. If I could choose, would I chuck in a pastel here? Definitely. But it's not my palette, it's not my brand. These are just preferences, but the quality of Ace Beauté is just incredible. And this is what I'm saying, the difference between this one and the, let me see if I can pull it out without, it is just not 100% the same. And this is what I was reminded of when I was using this for the 3rd time. It is not exactly the same. And I think you can see it on the shimmers that it's not exactly the same. This one has more of a putty shimmer formula, which is a formula that I really like because I can sheer it out and make it look very flattering on my lids, which is something that I like. I have something similar going on today. It's just a personal preference. Even though I don't think that these mattes are horrible, these mattes And you keep asking me, what is your favorite matte formula? This is one of my favorite matte formulas. It is just an incredible matte formula. It is pigmented, blendable, buildable, and it's just so beautiful. And it just really sticks to your skin, but you can still move it around. Really like this. And like this corner here, super beautiful. So yeah, I 100% recommend this palette. I think it's beautiful, and I apologize myself for not doing more looks with this because it is such a beautiful palette. It really is, and the quality is just really is there. And as you can probably tell by the front and the colors and also the names of the colors in here, if you look at them, this one is very much inspired by like the early 90s. This is definitely what the early 90s looked like for me. I know some people are like, no, it was like grunge and Kurt Cobain and supermodels. Ooh, the early 90s was like, you know, remember what people were wearing in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Yeah, I remember. That is what I remember the early 90s being, but I just really love that palette. I would 100% recommend you to check it out if you haven't already. I will leave the video where I'm using it down below. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know if you own any of these palettes, if you agree with me when it comes to these rankings. I will have a video tomorrow as well, and that is going to be a Black Friday guide to indie makeup. So if you are of any interest in indie makeup, I would 1,000,000% recommend you to check back tomorrow. I hope you're having an amazing Saturday, and I will see you then. Bye!